the first exposure, or the exposure to Immaculate Constellation, happened on a shared server that was shared by all the offices in OSD. What I was doing at the time was opening files that were clearly misfiled and either sorting them to our offices, part of that server, or putting them in their own box to be sorted by other responsible.
Your jobs.
I mean, this is more like volunteer duty, but yes.
So because you're a workaholic and you're curious and you read a lot, you come across a file that really is what leads us to being here today. It's the Shriver file.
Yeah, so it was labeled 2018 Shriver War Game. Might have been brief or something else, but that's it. There's nothing about that screams, it's a very interesting thing. In fact, usually a lot of war game briefs are pretty boring. So there's nothing that stood out about it.
Accidental exposure for you.
100%.
You go into it, and what do you see?
There's just a generic title slide. There's a banner without classification markings that just says Immaculate Constellation. And it has a placeholder slide that shows like the Shriver Shriver Air Base logo and some logos of the units involved. But at that time, I believe it would have still been like Air Force Space Command adjacent. So still nothing particularly stunning. I think the name at the top, probably just the name of the exercise. So the next slide, though, is where it gets interesting, because the face of Lou Elizondo is on that next slide, and I was not who I was expecting to see, and it was accompanied by text. To summarize, please have some grace with me. It's been 7 years, but it was saying that Immaculate Constellation is an unacknowledged special access program established after the exposure of ATIP in 2017 by former USDI officer Lou Elizondo. And that's the gist of that first slide. And so I'm looking at that, and nothing particularly convincing that that's alien related or what the SAP is or what it's doing. So I don't know what to make of this. So I read the whole thing, and it got very interesting very quick.
So it's designated a SAP. This is a SAP. It's sitting on a server. Maybe it shouldn't be on.
Correct.
Right. So I think that's important. And also, it seems like it's just a response to the public spillage or exposure that we saw come forward with people like, and specifically Lou Elizondo. This was like an internal classified response to the fact, oh shit, some of this is out now.
Yeah, that's exactly the tone of those words, of that slide. That's the implied order of events that led to it being established.
So it was like 2018, maybe.
Yeah, the file was at least last accessed in 2018. I can't remember if it did say, the file creation date, or if I looked it up, but I know it was last accessed.
And you see who's accessed it prior to you?
I can.
And what did you see?
So everyone says that I'm wrong and it's impossible, but the name I recalled at the time thinking, oh, that's odd, was
name redacted.
And did you know who that was?
Vaguely. At that time, people are considered superstars in leadership circles, so you just hear names like that, and that's what her name was.
Why would that be impossible? Why are people now, in retrospect, why are people telling you that would be impossible?
Oh, she wasn't at the Pentagon then.
Mm-hmm.
Where was she? She was at the Pentagon, to my knowledge, but they're saying she wasn't there.
Right.
Interesting. And
so, all right, so Shriver War Games, you keep reading. There's a big slide with Lou Elizondo's face on it. What comes next? I mean, you get a sense that I shouldn't be able to read this here.
No, not yet, actually.
No.
To be clear, at that point in time, I had no formal training in what SAPs were. There was no SAP marking on this, just a name, Immaculate Constellation. The opening slide, just, we would call it improperly labeled, improperly classified.
What was it? What did it show?
So the next slide, the third slide just jumps straight into the mission of the SAP and showing what apparently the results of that mission are. And it's a collection incident in the Pacific Ocean. The subject of collection is several Russian naval intelligence vessels in the middle of the ocean at night. And above those vessels is a large black triangle floating in the air. This is a still image, but it is color.
Okay, so that's the first kind of event, but what was the mission? What was the mission? That's what people want to know, is what was the mission of Immaculate Constellation as described in the product?
So in the product itself, you had to piece together the mission by reading the whole thing and kind of putting together the parts. It never spelled out fully, like as it should, the mission of the SAP. And I assume that's because this is a type of brief where there will be inserts to the deck, which would be inserted by the SAP control officer during the briefing that would provide another level of detail.